Appearance on Dion's Daily Dose does not imply endorsement from or by any candidate or guest. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by Dion Bergeron or Dion's Daily Dose are his own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of any guest. Material and information presented is for general information purposes only. The Dion's Daily Dose name in all forms and abbreviations are the property of its owners, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service. If you'd like to support the show, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/Dion's Daily Dose.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Dion's Daily Dose. So tonight we have a special guest. We actually have a Secretary of State candidate. We're moving up in the world. We have Jeff Maurer. I think I'm going to get him to verify how you say his name, but I've heard people butcher it for a while. I've heard his campaign team call him Maurer, so I'm going to use that until he gets on to verify whether I'm right or wrong. But again, Secretary of State candidate. He's from Libertarian Party, which has made amazing gains recently. I'm pretty sure we're going to start seeing some state level Libertarian candidates getting elected here in Indiana. As you know, Rainwater did extremely well. So here we got some people here who give you the links. You can learn more about them at more. Again, I'm going to say it like this until I get him on and he can correct me. More for Indiana. Without further ado, here he is. And the first thing we're going to ask him is how to properly say his name. Here we go.
Dion, good evening. Good to be with you. Thank you so much for having me here. And so as we were talking about earlier, this is really a privilege, right? This is what it's about. We're two different candidates from two different parties, and yet we're here to have a very civil and productive discourse about what's important to us. And sometimes we're going to agree and sometimes we're going to disagree, but it can be done. It should be done. And this is what we as Hoosiers and we as Americans deserve. So, Dion, I wish I could reach to the screen, shake your hand, say, I'm grateful for you, thankful for this opportunity to show that it can be done.
Awesome. I'm going to turn things over to you for a moment. If you could, first of all, am I saying your name right?
You are. So listen, I'm running for office, which means however you say my name is the right way to say it, right? You know the deal. But you're correct. My name is Maurer, like more or less the less.
Okay, nice. Okay, I get it. All right, I'm going to turn things over to you. You can introduce yourself, tell people, whatever you want them to know about you. We'll get into the nitty gritty and stuff, but just a general introduction. I'm out of here.
Sure. So 2-minute quick intro. Thanks everyone for listening. My name is Jeff Maurer. I am the Libertarian candidate for Indiana Secretary of State. And so in 13 short days, we're going to go to the polls and choose our future. And because I saw what was happening in our elections in 2016 and 2020, I could see the same problem that you do, which is people just don't trust the processes. And how do we fix that? Well, I can look at common sense solutions that we know from business that we've used for decades, if not centuries. Audits and receipts, a process for checking compliance with our own rules as a means for ensuring that what we get is what we want. And we can learn from that and apply it to our elections, because we know at the end of the day, when we count our votes the way we count our cash, we're going to finally get the elections that we deserve. Integrity never needs to hide. And we forward that integrity, receipts, things that we can see and point back and have everybody on the same page. And that common sense approach is what I want to bring to our elections. That's why I'm running for secretary. That's why I am having these conversations across the state. And that's why I'm today to get into the substance of what this is, and look forward to your questions.
Awesome. We appreciate you making the time to come on. I've had several people send in questions, so we'll get to those. Looks like you're quite popular. We got some comments here. Finally, a real choice. We got my real fake name. I love that, by the way. Jeff Maurer for the win. So first of all, what made I know the kind of the general and lots of people across the state are with you. We may not necessarily think the election was, the S word that you can't say. But there are people that question how the process works and can we trust what happens. Here in LaPorte County, we actually only recently had to have a paper auditing process here. Last election, it was impossible to do a full paper audit of the election because we use microvote. They don't allow, or there's no way to actually go in and pull up the paper and say this person voted for this person voted for that person. And as you know, when you do recounts, that just shows you what it already told you. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people are a lot of people are hesitant about, is the process really secure? And both parties, all three parties, across the lines, all the way back from I think 2006 or so, have been saying, hey, we have some questions. Now the legacy media likes to paint people as so-called election deniers. I'll take whatever label you want to give me, as long as it ends up with an election that we can believe in. So I'm right there with you on that. What's your background?
Sure. Wow, there's a lot to talk about there, but I'll quickly give my backgrounds. I've got my undergraduate degree from Washington University in St. Louis. That was in international business and marketing. My career has been in finance and technology. I managed a $300 million budget and worked very closely with implementing the accounting controls and audit controls to make sure that our processes and money were being tracked and spent correctly. Much of my career then was in technology. I worked in trucking transportation, in electrification for a research company, and I even formed my own virtual reality tech company as co-founded as CEO here in Indiana. So on the small business side, I've been that owner, CEO, and co-founder, worried about cash flows and payroll and service and product and website and marketing. And I can speak to all that from the small business perspective. But when you ask about our elections, let's go back to that. So the Secretary of State's office, third highest constitutional office in our state by order of succession, it goes very clearly governor, lieutenant governor, Secretary of State. So
a lot of people know that.
It's a pretty important position. And by the title alone, secretary, you can tell there's not a lot of policy. It's historically a very administrative office, but given our elections, it's become much more policy oriented. So that's one of the reasons why we see so much focus on this office now, more than ever in the past. Otherwise, it's been a sleepy office. And there are 4 divisions: the elections division, which is what most of us know best. The next is the business services division, which licenses small business and nonprofits. And then third division is the auto dealers services division, which effectively enforces state law for the auto dealers industry. And fourth but not last is the securities division, which helps investigate securities or financial crimes like Ponzi schemes. So within the elections division, that's where the bulk of the conversation is happening right now. And you're exactly right. One of the things that I object to from my Democrat opponent is that I'm being painted as some kind of radical who perpetuates the big lie and is spreading disinformation. And just the opposite. I'm running because I want to dispel that. I don't want to exist. I want to have clarity and transparency and confidence around our elections. And that means we have to have an audit. That means we have to have receipts. That means we need better documentation. So I reject all of those premises. I reject all the name calling. In fact, I want us to all be able to see what's going on.
I appreciate it. And there's so much that the Secretary of State's office actually handles that I, for one, wasn't aware of when I first got, kind of into it and learning about it. One of the things that I heard during the debate, and by the way, I think you did exceptionally well during the debate. I thought that you made some excellent points, and I was stunned by the. I got to be kind of careful here. As all of you watching probably know, I'm a Republican candidate for office, so I have to kind of caution myself about things that I'm about to say. They can kick you out of the Republican Party if if you say negative things, or if you the actual wording is if you help a candidate from another party during the election process. So having you on the show, obviously, that's my prerogative, but I have to carefully word things that I'm trying to say so as not to come off as sanctioned.
Maybe it'll make your life easier or safer if I say those things. Then can we team up on that?
Right.
Okay. So we're talking about the debate, and let's say this: everybody won the debate. There's a focus on which candidate wins the debate, and I think that's a false choice, because the winner of every debate is you, the voter, and neighbor, and the person watching. You go buy something online or even in a store. I want to compare two tomatoes. I want to compare them side by side, and being able to me win, and being able to compare 2 or 3 candidates together, you win. So whatever is said or happens on you, the voter, or the winner, because you now are more informed, you know who your candidates are, and I'm happy for that. And so I think all of you come away as winners from that, not just as like everybody gets a trophy, but this is why we have debates. And Dion, I'm probably going to go and say what you may have wanted to say was the debate was not complete because there was a missing candidate. There were 3 candidates on the ballot statewide. There was a Republican, there was a Democrat, and there's me, the Libertarian. And I'm disappointed when anyone refuses to show up and participate in that conversation, because he or she also has important things to say, not only in their own defense, but in their own offense. And I should be challenged in my ideas. I want to be able to have, the value of debate for you, the voter, is for candidates to challenge each other, to call BS where there's BS, and to have to answer to all of that. And it's incomplete for you, the voter, when one or more of the candidates is not present. There was a local Indianapolis TV station that just had a forum that did not include, there was a Senate forum for U.S. Senate candidates, and they intentionally chose not to include the Libertarian. And I don't think that's fair. And it's legal, but it's perhaps not best practice, because again, the viewer, the voter, just doesn't get that information. So Dion, I don't know if where you were going with that, but we might all agree to say that it's a good thing when healthy democracies need healthy debate.
Absolutely. And you summed it up very well. I think that the more people hear from the more candidates, the better informed we are. And one of the biggest problems with our election, machines aside, so-called theories aside, one of the biggest issues we have with our elections are uninformed voters. And people who don't know, when they go into the ballot box, who these people are. They push for the name they recognize, or they choose a straight ticket because this party is supposed to represent this thing. I am not a fan of straight ticket voting. I think it does a grave disservice to anyone who is not a career politician. I want to address something real quick for my viewers. I had an issue last night with the show that I had. Facebook, for about a 24-hour to 48-hour period, Facebook had an issue with StreamYard, which is the software that I use to do this. And it seemed to cut out. I will tell you that YouTube and Rumble links for last night's interview are working just fine. So you may want to check it there. You'll be able to see the whole thing. Sorry about that. Overall, I think you did phenomenal in the debate. I do have a couple of questions. Sure. I know in a debate format, they give you a very short window of time to answer. So you're kind of, got a very narrow focus. Yep. But there are a couple of things that I wanted to touch on when we get to it.
You're exactly right. The debate format there are pros and cons like everything in life. And it's imperfect because it's a very formal setting and everybody sort of looks terrified. Some of us all feel that way. And the answers is not as much organic conversation. There are other forums that I've been on. In fact, there was one a week or two later at the Indianapolis Rotary Club. That's public. It's online. And again, all candidates were invited. And I was on stage with only my Democratic opponent. And you can see there was still a feisty conversation, but it was much more back and forth. And you get a lot more detail and more, I think, in some ways, from the issues. But in all of these, again, you are the winner because you get to see where we agree, where we disagree. And I'm really glad that we have this time tonight to be able to follow up and have those more meaningful answers to the questions that just don't get answered in 60 seconds. So fire away. Actually, before you do, we're talking about difficult names, and you were trying to guess at mine, and I see John's comment. So is that John? How do you say your name? Is that Gazarkowitz? Is that correct? How would you say it? Maybe you can
Yeah,
kind of
John,
type
let
it out.
us know if there's a few minute delay, but let us know, John, if he's saying it right. That's what I think. Let's see, Gazarkowitz. That's my guess.
I want to get it
So very,
right.
very close. And Facebook, look, Facebook does do that. Oh, yep, we got it right.
There you go.
Nice job. If you have questions for Jeff, just pop them on here. The only destination that I stream to that you're unable to interact is Rumble. I don't know if they plan on fixing that later, but you can watch. So yeah, he said we're both right. I appreciate that. Thank you. I have what I call rapid fire questions. Now these are non-political in nature. They are just kind of for people to get to know you better. The first one is my most important one. It's kind of the top of the list for me. Some people don't care. I do. If you like steak, beef, how do you like it cooked?
This one I'm very certain on. There are political answers, and you're like, oh, I like them all. No, medium rare. It is. I'm sorry. I'm going to disagree with anybody who thinks. I mean, rare is okay. For me, it's medium rare.
Medium rare. Thank you. Yes. Yes. My wife, she's like, it's not cooked. I assure you it is cooked perfectly. All right. Cats or dogs?
I have a friend who's making hamburgers. He says, I want a hockey puck, like well done, but beyond well done. And that's the right choice for him. But if it's a quality to honor this cow, to honor this piece of beef, has to be medium rare. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This animal gave its life to sustain you. The least you can do is treat its meat with some respect and prepare it medium rare. Excuse me. Do you like cats or dogs or something more exotic?
I grew up with cats and I have a dog now. So the answer is both.
Okay. All right. Nothing wrong with that. I also have, I have 3 cats and a dog. So now normally I ask, this is the point where I ask region specific questions. But where do you live, actually?
Sure. So I'm based in Carmel. I'm on the north side of Indianapolis.
Okay. All right. So Carmel's a really, really nice area, but it's not like hoity-toity. I've been through there a number of times driving back and forth, and I always like to stop. What's your favorite local restaurant there?
Good question. So Carmel, like many places, has lots of different neighborhoods, and there are some very wealthy parts of Carmel, like people with their own private golf courses. I assure you that's not me. I promise you I have to work for a living. And I have a modest home in a modest neighborhood, but it's right for me. Okay. And I will tell you this as well. You can't buy good neighbors. I'm so grateful to have just amazing neighbors, an entire community of people, driveway parties and porch parties, and just some of them are coming out to the election night party. So I'm very grateful for that. And all the money in the world just can't buy great neighbors, and I've got great neighbors.
Absolutely. Are you Pepsi, Coke, or other?
Wait, I didn't answer your other question, and I mean to.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to evade that. So favorite restaurant in the area.
Yeah.
There's a local bar that is just a very cool place. It's their own brewery. It's Union Brewing, and they were in this cool outdoor place. They had a huge patio, live music, just a towny place. There's a local Jamaican restaurant with beef patties next door, and so it was where people just came to relax and be themselves. And depending on the night of the week, you could have young people who were going out on a Saturday night, or local townies, or young professionals, or the chess club, or the Road Runners Club, and you never knew who you were going to get, but it was always just a very relaxed place, and I love that kind of local. It started there. It's at least 10, 15 years old, and maybe even older than that. So they are moving to a new location because of some redevelopment in Carmel, and I'm looking forward to visiting them at their new location when they reopen in about another 2 or 3 weeks.
Oh, okay, phenomenal. So good. They should be back open by the time I get elected and get to go back and forth to Indy, and I'll make sure to stop in because it sounds like the kind of place I would enjoy.
And that's Union Brewing. And just to put character on, like, this is the kind of place they are. When they moved locations, we have the Monon Trail, which is an old rail trail, which is now a very, very popular pathway. So bicyclists and joggers and runners and babies and strollers and dogs. And so when they moved locations, they literally took their bar and had about 20 people carrying it. And they had a, honest to God, brass marching band playing music. So they marched the bar down the rail trail to their new
Yeah.
location. And this video is online. You can see it. And that's just the kind of cool people they are. The guys in shorts and t-shirts, just the local people. And that's one of the favorite things about it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That sounds like the kind of place I would definitely enjoy. Okay, so last one for right now of this type. What is your favorite movie?
Okay, and first, Coke and Pepsi. I used to grow up drinking a lot of soda, and that would have been primarily Coke. I don't do that. I've got an occasional root beer or ginger ale, but mostly it's coffee. It's a lot of coffee, black.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the sugar and cream adds up. So coffee is the answer. Favorite movie? That one is much tougher. Seasonally right now, we're going to have to be in Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters 1. There's just so much dark humor, and it's can be seen on so many levels. It's a treasure.
It's a classic. It really is. It's definitely up there with one of my favorite movies. I have a 16-year-old who is he's very cautious when it comes to, hey, I want to watch this movie with you. Come watch this movie. But so I don't get many, but Ghostbusters was one of the ones that I lucked out, and he actually sat down, and after the first few minutes, he's like, "Oh, I love this movie." So I was able to score a win, a little point in the parenting column there. Do you have any children?
I do. I have a son who's 2.5.
Oh, we had no audio for a second, but it caught up. Yeah, I think we're having some internet connectivity issues, but I think we're good now. I think
okay. I heard a little glitch on my end, but to answer your question, I do. I have a son who's 2.5.
Okay, awesome. Having children changes your entire outlook. I found it just changes the way that you look at everything, and you get to see things through their eyes that you just never thought. So before we move on, I got a question that I got to make sure to ask you. He's a longtime supporter of mine. He identifies as a libertarian, and he follows everything. He's our mutual friend, Paul. He actually is the one that is responsible for setting this up. He was able to put us in contact and make this happen. He would like to know the way that it's currently set up. There's limited assistance. There is assistance, but limited assistance for those who are handicapped or who have cognitive issues. They still have the right to vote, but there's limited assistance for them actually in the voting booth. As Secretary of State, what do you think we can do as a state and, here in Indiana at the least, to improve that and make it easier for those people to vote?
That's a good question. And I don't know all the specifics of it. It's one area that I honestly wish to learn more about. So we're going to look at different types of needs, whether it's visual needs, so somebody who's visually disabled or challenged, somebody who is auditorially challenged, whether they're cognitively challenged. Those are all different types of things to work through and what services they need. We want to protect the sanctity and privacy of their vote. So if they need somebody to press a button, that we might need to communicate, because let's say they can't see and we need them to have an assistant to press the button for them. Then in that case, we need to communicate, or they need to communicate, I want to vote for this person. And now all of a sudden that vote isn't secure. So we, just like the old adage, we have to balance security with liberty. And in very much the same way, we need to balance the ability for somebody with those disadvantages to vote while still protecting their privacy. The good news is that we do have a series of about a dozen different exemptions to vote earlier, vote absentee, by mail, and people with disabilities can do that. So there are Braille ballots available. There are all kinds of solutions out there, but the reality is everybody's different and we all have different needs. So I do want to make sure, this is important to address those and in making sure that these are the exceptions, not the rules. So if suddenly everybody wants a Braille ballot mailed to their home, we should all pause and say, does that seem right? And that answer is probably not. And so what's vulnerable here, and what do we need to protect from a system integrity perspective, but at the same time to enable, empower, and to frankly protect the rights of those who do have those disabilities or challenges, and ensuring that their voices and votes are heard equally and constitutionally. That's also our responsibility.
Excellent answer. I don't know all of kind of we're actually there's a lady that my wife is very close with. She has dementia. She's has days where she's perfectly fine and other days that, dementia. We're trying to figure out the best option for her to vote, and she doesn't want. She's of the long-standing Republican Party. You vote on election day at the polls. You don't get an absentee ballot unless you just physically cannot make it out there. So it kind of brought up the conversation. Well, let's say she goes in there. She's in a wheelchair. So okay, how does that work? We learned that the machines actually have the booths have adjustable, legs on them that go up and down. So we're like, okay, that's one thing. Yeah. But what if it was more serious? What if she wasn't able to physically press a button? What if this? What if that? So it's good to know that there are people that are thinking about that. We got a question here. It's kind of the same. In a debate,
one more note on that. Particularly with people with dementia, I know during the debate I mentioned my grandmother who was living in an Alzheimer's ward in an assisted living facility, and some group came through and cast her vote for her. And to this day, we don't know which vote that was, and was that really consistent with her desires. And we, her family, knew her best over decades. And even more recently, we had a sense of her more lucid moments and what her political views were. So remember that going into the voting booth, this is not a test in school. You can take notes. It's an open book test. Now, there are laws about you can't wear campaign paraphernalia, you can't bring in palm cards and other campaign signage, but you can bring in your own notes. So for somebody in that situation, the family members who are closest to those people, you can sit down, especially in those moments of greater lucidity, and write down all the people you want to vote for. You can go online right now to indianavoters.com and put in your name and address, name and date of birth and county, and see exactly who's going to be on your ballot, down to your local races. So go do that. Find who's going to be on your ballot. Do your research now. Make your decisions, and you can write down your decisions. Take that in as an open book cheat sheet into your voting booth. That way, you don't have to worry about, oh gosh, is my loved one going to be lucid in that moment when he or she goes to vote? So that's one way to help overcome that.
Yeah, excellent suggestion. Is that Indiana Voter or Voters?
Voters, plural. And so that's the front, indianavoters.com. That's the front end to the Secretary of State's website.
And I'm going to throw that up there on the screen for people so they can see it for a minute. Yeah. And I highly recommend it. I visit there. You can find out a whole bunch of information at that site, who's on your ballot, where you're at, all that. So phenomenal.
Before, you should, hopefully everyone's done this already before October 11th, but you can also confirm your registration. You can see that your registration is active and confirm the address. So if you have moved, or if there's a problem, if there's a discrepancy, a transposition, anything that might reject your vote, the validity of your vote, those are things to fix before 28 days before voting starts. So now we're sort of locked in. We can get around it, right? We can cast provisional ballots and rectify or cure things separately. But either way, it's a very good practice to log in, make sure that your registration is current and correct.
Right. And you know what, before I move on to the question, because you did mention, it's a very limited, as we said before, in a debate format, you got 60 seconds or 90 seconds or however long they give you in order to answer a particular question, stay on topic, whatever. One of the things that has been brought to my attention during the debate, when the question was asked about the nursing homes, and not necessarily nursing home, but assisted living facilities, stuff like that, the Secretary of State is responsible for certifying these places. You focused on your family member because it's a personal thing, but do you believe that there should be more stringent, I guess, either yearly checks or updates or something that the Secretary of State is involved in order to make sure that these facilities, the voting thing is bad, but there are other things that could potentially happen, and we've seen them happen. Is there a way the Secretary of State can, I guess, do more to assure the safety of the residents?
Sure. So government can always do more. Government can always make more laws and become more involved in more parts of your life and your business. As a libertarian, I tend to disfavor those solutions. Sometimes there's need, yes, but in this case, as Secretary of State, and running senior living or assisted living facilities is not my profession. It's not my background. I'm not any more qualified than anyone else to know how these businesses should run. In fact, I'm less qualified than the people who actually run them because they have the expertise of running them. So I get it. They know best. So what we need to do is work together to find out what level of service we expect. So if their members are, if their residents are voting perhaps against their will or against their knowledge, then that's one area that we need to work together on. If they're becoming ill or injured or dying, then obviously there are going to be other agencies involved in that need to protect those lives in that way. But we need to work together to figure out what that is. What's our goal? What level of services do we expect? Just like we set service expectations for 911. If you call with an emergency, how long? What's the expectation for a police officer to get to your door, for an ambulance, for a fire truck? So is it 1 minute? Do we expect it to be 1 minute, or are we okay with 10 minutes? Whatever that is, that's where we need to have the policy discussion and then work backwards from that to figure out, okay, well, now that we said we have to have somebody to your door within 1 minute, what's this going to cost? How are we going to do it? How many firehouses? How many police cruisers do we need? Same thing with the assisted living and this whole industry. We need to understand what are our expectations, and then who and how are we going to ensure that. And there's an interesting parallel here from the auto dealers industry where, yes, the Secretary of State's office has a very clear mandate to enforce state law. And on things like getting a registration, getting a title in time. So where and these are some pretty small fines all told. It could be even $100 for not delivering a title within 30, 31 days. That's a slap on the wrist to an auto dealer. And what the auto dealers have told me is that one bad review online can cost them $500,000 of sales in just a few months. So the market is far more effective at punishing bad actors than a $100 fine from the government, which could come years later, right? Let's be honest. So how do we get more transparency, more accountability, more reviews? How do we get more information out of these closed boxes so that way we, the consumer, we, the family members of people in assisted living, know what's really happening inside? And I'd like to work to that end to make that more transparent, because good actors will be valued for their services and bad actors will be punished and pushed out of the marketplace. My own background in trucking transportation, we saw this firsthand when dash cameras came into effect. And it came into an industry standard. There were initially, and these are of course the video cameras on your dashboard, and most truck drivers initially really resented it. Said, "Oh, I've got Big Brother watching me, and they're gonna, say I did this or say I did that." And sure enough, there were some bad actors, and they were doing things that they should not have been doing. And of course, they objected to having a camera there. But fast forward a few years, and in just a few short years, and Dion, it's actually opposite right now. So truck drivers want these cameras because they're doing the right thing. They're following the speed limit. It's the crazy people who cut in front of them. It's the wild truck that, the wild thing that happens that comes across the highway that no one could have expected. That the video protects them. The video defends them. The video exculpates them. And so they want the camera to protect them in that sense. And I think, a friend of mine, Danny Lundy, is Libertarian Party chair in Morgan County. And a few years ago, he started just showing up at county council meetings, not saying anything, just putting his camera on a tripod and broadcasting the meetings on Facebook. That's all. And initially, the city council really disliked it. Absolutely felt pressured, and they weren't sure what the angle was, and they felt pressure from neighbors and people calling in and holding them accountable. And now, fast forward again, just a few short years, the complaint they get is that it's now not on Facebook, or it's not on YouTube, but only on Facebook. So they want to see this video on multiple platforms, and the council members ask for it. They want the video feed because it shows that they're doing the work. It shows that they're addressing the issues. It shows they're responding to their neighbors. That's the kind of transparency that people really do like, and it works both ways. And one of the things that I'm proud of in my campaign, whether you like my policies or are excited to vote against me, that's your choice. But on all of my literature, I've got a phone number, and it's the campaign phone number, and it reaches the cell phone that's in my pocket, and that is 317-721-6438. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, you can get a hold of me. You can hold me accountable. You can tell me what you like, what you don't like, because no matter who wins or no matter how I get elected or voted in, my job is to serve everyone, serve the people of Indiana. And part of that means serving people that don't agree with me.
Right. You nailed it right there. And that's one of the things that I really wish we could see from more candidates, regardless of party, is you're supposed to be there to serve the constituents, whether that's the state, whether that's your district, your town, whatever. So be available, be accountable. So it's great to see. And, people who are the more people who do that, the more people that, are available and are accountable and are transparent, it pressures those who don't want to be to either get that way or get voted out. And I think, overall, it's a fantastic thing. I was actually a truck driver for about 10 years. I worked for Werner Enterprises. I was a trainer for them. So you're absolutely right. Werner was actually one of the places that had was the first company to use the computerized logbooks. And initially drivers hated it, but the more they used it, the more it made things easier for them and easier for everyone. It was very simple. If you got pulled over or whatever, you just show the officer the computerized log and everything was good. So with the ones that are doing the right thing, greatly appreciate the transparency available there.
And that's my point. That goes back to sort of a theme of the campaign, that integrity never needs to hide. If you're doing the right thing, show it. You've got nothing to hide, right?
Yes, absolutely.
That's one of those things that we can bring through these nothing to hide type of platforms, like receipts and audits, like ELDs or those electronic logs, like dash cameras, and like cameras in a public meeting. We can just make it all public and put it into the public light. That way there's nothing to be hidden, nothing that can be hidden, and we'll all benefit from that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Kevin asked a question earlier. Real quick, though, Kathy wanted to thank you. She's actually dealing with a parent who has dementia, and she appreciates the suggestion on how to assist that process. Kevin would like to know, and keep up with technology. Do you still believe in the use of paper ballots? And if so, how can we keep those secure?
Excellent question. So first, Kathy, good on you for taking care of a parent. That's a really, really hard job. That's a full-time job, and it's emotional and time-consuming and just exhausting, but really, really important work. So I just want to recognize you for what surely must not be an easy job and an easy task, but loving a parent, especially with dementia or Alzheimer's, good on you, and keep doing the right things there. So anything I can do to help, you let me know. Let's get to Kevin's question, which is about the core of much of our elections, paper versus electronic. And what I'm calling for is really a hybrid solution. So it's paper and electronic. And I'll get into why. So I'm calling for a triangulated 3-point receipt. The first is the a 3-point receipt or a 3-point vote that gets cast. The first is an electronic copy. And we need that for immediate tabulation. For better or for worse, and probably for the worse, Americans have become habituated to instantaneous election night results. We want instant gratification, just like ordering a pizza or Amazon Prime, having something at the door within 2 hours, right? And Amazon set that bar, right? They just kept making it better and better, and all the competitors had to get better and better. And if we do that with transparency, guess what? We'll get better and better from everyone. But with that need for instant gratification, you know it and I know it. If it takes hours or days or weeks to get a count, suddenly all the accusations, oh, there was a box of ballots that appeared here, there's a box that disappeared there, and now we've lost it, right? It's too late. So we need the immediacy of an electronic tabulation, and we need that election night. It also needs to be right. So that's why the electronic record needs to be solid and correct. So I want to keep that. But if we use that on its own, it is no way, no how good enough. Remember that in Indiana, 60% of all our votes cast, the majority, have no paper whatsoever. Not a ballot, not a receipt, nothing. It's electronic only. And to me, that's unconscionable and inexcusable. So good news is that there is a law that was advanced from 2030 to 2024. So theoretically, by 2024, every vote cast should have at least a paper receipt. So we're addressing that. But right now in 2022, even, we are going to have potentially a majority of votes cast with no paper receipt whatsoever. And that lends itself to all kinds of accusations, all kinds of vulnerabilities. And when you've got a vulnerability, you have a gray area where people can accuse and say, I don't trust. And now there are conspiracy theories, big lies, disinformation. We just don't know, and we can't disprove it. That's Dion, that's the challenge. We have to prove the absence of fraud.
Right, which is impossible.
Well, it's not impossible, and that's what audits do, right? We prove the absence of fraud. We prove that bad things didn't happen because we can show that only good things happened and that bad things can happen.
With an upgrade to the technology to where we can show. Currently, it's not possible because there's no paper backup. There's no way to say, not for all, but like you said, the majority, there's no evidence. There's nothing you can pull up and say, look, this is right, this is right, this is right.
That's exactly right. Even Santa Claus makes a list and checks it twice. Why don't we, right?
Right.
So,
right. Absolutely.
It's in the song. We sing it. It's a Santa Claus audit. That's all it is. All right. So we have the first vote, or the first cast, which is the electronic cast. Then what I want for 100% of all votes is to have a paper backup. So the preferred option is to actually have a paper ballot that then gets scanned. That's better because that's the original record. But as a second best option is at least a paper receipt. And from that, we're going to have that through the VVPAT, which is called the Voter Verified Paper Audit Trail, which is a fancy word for a really expensive receipt printer. But by 2024, every vote cast should at least have that. And many of the neighbors that I've heard who've cast votes, they see that now when you cast your vote, it prints the receipt. It shows your name. It actually shows your name and who you voted for. It's a receipt under a little glass window. And when you click submit, the paper rolls forward and now it's blank for the next person to walk in. So we should have that. And the reason we need that is so that way the government, the county clerk, has the electronic cast, has the electronic vote, and they have a paper copy. And so they can do an audit. Audit means comparing. We have to have something to compare to. Does everybody remember the election of 2000 in Florida where we had pregnant Chad and hanging Chad and dimple Chad? We had the original record on paper. We had something to compare to. And the problem for the majority, 60% of all votes cast now, is there's nothing to compare to. We just asked the computer, hey, computer, do you remember that number you told me before? Tell it to me again. That's not an audit.
Right. Absolutely. So one of the things,
the third part of that, this is what's new. This is what I'm asking for, is a receipt that you keep, a printed piece of paper that you leave the voting booth with. You go home, you go online, and you track your vote. You hold government accountable. With only two receipts, the electronic and the paper, government's responsible to you. They have to do the auditing for you. They have to do the recount for you. You have no control of the process other than to hope you've got good people in office. But with a receipt that you keep, a third triangulated. Remember, triangulation power because it holds all three sides, hold the other accountable. With a printed receipt, you go home, you go online, you track your vote. So imagine like an Amazon package or a FedEx package, you have a tracking number. You can say, hey, government, what about this ballot here, number 1234 with security code 5678? Where is that? Show me that ballot because I've got my receipt right here and I want you to show me where that is. I don't see it counted. I don't see it tabulated. So that gives you power for the first time, power over the Secretary of State, power over county clerks, power over the recount and retabulation process because you get to ask to see your vote. And that's what I want for you.
I like that. I like that a lot. I think we're so out of the loop as far once we cast our vote and we walk away, like you said, kind of government's in charge. They're the ones that do everything. But some sort of receipt that we can track. And that I forgot who it was, but I was talking to someone a couple of years ago, actually, who was talking about the election process, and they mentioned blockchain technology. Now, I'm no tech guru, but the limited amount that I know about blockchain, is that something that we could potentially use to ensure that our votes are secure, easy? Maybe you know more about it than I do. I have very limited amount of information on it.
Sure. So blockchain isn't that scary. The short answer is yes, I believe that is definitely a technology that we should be looking at in the future. Are we ready to use it now? No. And here's what we need to do right now. We need to secure what we have. We need to shore up our foundation. We need to have trust in the process that we have. And only then can we then begin to layer in new technologies and new solutions to improve it. So think about it this way. Right now, pretty much every solution, every change that we make to elections is either it's a cross, it's one or the other. It's either more convenient or it's more secure. So if you want to vote from home, definitely more convenient, but also definitely less secure. And one comes at the cost of the other. Blockchain is very different because it can be both more secure and more convenient. And long term, again, I'm optimistic that there's a very good application for it. We see lots of, look at publicly traded companies, they have millions of shareholders and they have legally required votes for voting those shares. And those are to comply with federal SEC compliance. So there's a federal compliance component to all of this. And they have electronic voting. They have it over internationally. They have it over multiple time zones, over across different countries, and it works. It's secure enough to know. And again, same thing, who is credentialed to vote? In the US, we have, in Indiana, the two constitutional criteria for voting are you have to be a citizen and you have to have residency for 30 days. And we can, therefore, there are people who are eligible to vote and people who are not eligible to vote. And again, for corporations, you have people who own shares and people who don't own shares. So they have ways to ensure that the right people are voting. And this has been going on for years. There are other municipalities. There is one that I know of in Utah that is already using a blockchain system to do electronic voting. And there are a lot of really attractive features of it that, again, long-term, we can think about. So think about having, when you go to get your license at the BMV, you have to present ID and documentation to show you are that person. And then you are given a secure document that is your ID, your driver's license, or your voter ID card. Well, we could similarly charge a specific mobile device with a unique mobile device ID number, and that can be registered to you. That's your cell phone. So now you've got that, you've got biometric data, maybe your thumbprint on it, and we can also use geofencing. So if you're registered at 123 Happy Street and your mobile ID device that has been pre-registered to you is geofenced and per GPS, per satellites in space, pinpoint this phone at 1234 Happy Street, and it shows that you are there and you unlock it with your biometric data and you put in your security information, such as your driver's license card. Think about all these layers of security, and all of a sudden it could be an even more secure way of voting. But pros and cons, and we have to work through that. We have to phase that in. We have to do a lot of education around that. But none of that can be done until we secure what we have right now. We have to get the foundation right first.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I absolutely agree. The 100% that we have to return people to confidence in the election. We started, and it's gone on for a while, like you said, with the hanging chads and all the issues in Florida back from then. And then in 2016, we had many prominent people from the Democrat Party screaming about election issues. And then in 2020, same thing. I think it would behoove all of us, regardless of our political persuasion, to have confidence in our elections again, to say that, okay, I know that when I go into the voting booth and I cast my vote, that it's going where I want it, and there's no hanky-panky going on. I can track it. These are all really, really good ideas. Okay, so another question for you. Your Republican challenger, Diego, he has said that he's going to completely revamp the way that the county clerks are trained, and he's going to go to each office and he's going to personally train each of them. What's your thoughts on that? And do you think that there's a better way that this could be done? Because currently my understanding is that it's kind of all over the place as far as when a new county clerk takes over. They have very limited resources to learn the job. It's It's all over the place. So what do you think can be done better, and do you have a plan in that way?
Excellent. So this is an important issue. The county clerks first are unsung heroes of our elections. They are overworked, understaffed, under-resourced. There are 92 counties, 92 different county clerks, and it's said that in Indiana we have 92 different elections, and there's a lot of truth to that. So remember that the county clerks have typically 4 or 5 different responsibilities of their offices. Elections are only one small part of that. In a larger county like Allen County for Fort Wayne, elections might only be 10% of the job, and 90% is everything else. So county clerks typically handle the paper of the courts. They typically handle fees. If somebody has to pay a fee to the court, that they have to collect and process those. They often do marriages and weddings. So there's the county clerk could be officiating those. Sometimes they could be helping with property document records. So it really depends on the county and how it's structured. Different counties have different sizes and different needs and different complexities. In some counties, the clerk's office could be a dozen or a couple dozen people. But in some of our smaller counties, it could be one other staffer. So the range and scope of each county clerk's office really does vary. And you have to remember that there's no real certification for being a county clerk. You run for the office, you get it, and congratulations, you are now the expert. You are now responsible for knowing all these things. You have to sign off on these things. You're legally responsible. And that is a very daunting task. So how do you figure which end is up? And for that, there is a really strong network of county clerks in Indiana, and that's a hats off to them, right? That's a testament to the professionalism that they have and the respect that they have for themselves and for their office and for their colleagues. That's a great thing. Indiana should be proud. Hoosiers should be proud of our clerks for that. So there are a couple different clerk associations, and the clerks work together and they sort of cross train each other. If there's a new clerk, they'll bring them up to speed. They'll help from that perspective. There's a lot of manuals. There are many manuals and documentations out there to read, but as we all know, the book only goes so far. And how do you handle this issue? And how do we work through that? So there's a lot to learn in a short amount of time, and the clerk network helps each other. And that's where a lot of this training has come from. So the clerks, in my conversations with them, have asked for exactly that: more training, more standardized training. There's a provision for it in state code. It's probably unfunded, just like many other state mandated requirements that are unfunded. So we should look, that's going to require an appropriation from the legislature. But at the end of the day, we do want to have that kind of training. So I think it needs to come from the clerks. We need to have a timeout to put together what should this training look like? What's essential to know? What's priority to know? What parts are going to be more typical for larger counties, for smaller counties, for Democrat counties versus Republican counties? So let's put that all together, put our brains together and create this training. And I think it's a bold move. Here's where I might disagree with my Republican opponent. I think it's a bold move for me to write all the training and come out to the clerks and say, here's how to do your job. I've never done it before. Right. I don't have the confidence to do that. I can tell you, I believe the people who've been doing the job and doing it well, they know how to do that better than I do. So it's my job. One of my favorite quotes is from Gandhi, which is, "There go my people. I must follow them, for I am their leader." There go my people. I must follow them, for I am their leader. So it goes to this sort of push-pull relationship. And there's very much that kind of a push-pull duality between the Secretary of State and the clerks. The Secretary of State needs to learn from the clerks because the clerks are on the ground doing the job. They're the experts. But at the same time, the Secretary of State needs to lead and needs to say, this is a problem for all of us, and we all need one universal decision. This is what the form is going to look like. This is when we have the cutoff for this. This is what we're all going to be on the same page. We're all going to use the data in this format. That's where we need real leadership from the state level, so that way the clerks all have clarity, and this type of training can be done more clearly, more efficiently, and more effectively. So yes for training, yes for working closely with county clerks. I'll take a different approach in terms of leading or learning from them and letting them lead what that training should be, but also taking a leadership role to document it, so that way it doesn't have to be the clerks training each other. Some of that training could then come from the Secretary of State, but it being agreed upon and principally built by the clerks.
Right. Phenomenal. Yeah. I'll tell you that has been a concern about some of the clerks that I've spoken to is, okay, We're all for a unified system of doing it. We're all for a standardized training session when we take office. But where is this going to originate? Is this going to originate from someone who has no idea how to do the job? How is this going to come from us? Because we're not opposed to that. We're glad to get together, and it's what we do anyway. Yeah, you nailed it. So I'm glad to hear that.
Dion, for any folks who are listening, or even anybody listening, here's my own personal experience. So that way, I know I'm not BSing on this. So I was a firefighter for a dozen years, volunteer out on Long Island where I grew up, and we, firefighter deaths and accidents are tragic, and obviously nobody wants to see those. So in their infinite wisdom, the capital, Albany, the state house, the legislature got together and said, well, we want to make people safer. We want firefighters to be safer. And a big area, a major contributing cause for firefighter accidents and deaths is vehicle accidents and rollovers. And so it will be safer if these large, heavy fire trucks, which are trucks, are not driven by volunteers, but qualified CDL holder volunteers. And so New York State required, and I know, Dion, so you're going to be the man who understands what this actually means. The CDL is not an easy thing to get, right? You have to work hard, you have to practice, you have to train, you have to maintain that licensure, you have to you have to have a physical to keep it. It's a commitment, right? It's not just a whim.
Yes.
So now, if you can imagine that 80% of all across the state, all volunteers are, or 80% of firefighters across the state are all volunteers, having a requirement that they have a CDL to drive the fire truck, that is a big ask.
Yes.
So what happened was nothing changed. And everybody who drove the fire truck before didn't have a CDL and was driving that fire truck illegally. That includes me. So the law changed to say, and somebody from behind a desk who didn't understand this said, I know your job better than you do. I'm going to make you safer by requiring you to have this license, and therefore everybody go get a CDL and be safer. So yes, for a while I was driving the fire truck illegally, and that was because I didn't have a CDL. So Albany, the state capital, gets savvy and say, okay, we hear you. We're going to make it better. You only have to have a CDL when you're driving in non-emergency mode. So that means that every time I drove the fire truck to the fire, that was legal. But anytime I wanted to drive the fire truck back to the firehouse, now I was breaking the law again because I didn't have a CDL. Right. So, Dion, is there anything stupider than you can imagine?
No.
Okay. So this is what
leave it up to government to screw it up.
Exactly. Yeah, it impacted me personally, and I knew I was taking a risk. Right, I was breaking the law. I knew I was. But this is what happens when bureaucrats make rules for people who know their job best. And yes. I don't accept that, and I don't want to be one of those fools. Okay,
awesome. Look, we're quickly approaching out of time, which is unfortunate because I'm actually really enjoying this. So I'll give you, I guess, the hard questions to wrap up. First of all, so there are many who are maybe registered Republicans, maybe have always voted Republican in the past because they're terrified of what the other party will do if they were to get in charge of our elections. I've heard this from a number of people. Sure. If those people, okay, and I'm trying to think of how to word this. If those people, for whatever reason, don't want to vote for a Republican candidate, but they're afraid that if they do not, that a Democrat will win, what is your, I guess, words to them? Sure. What would you like to say to them?
Sure. So the only vote wasted is the one that you cast for something you don't want. So if you are tired of what we have, then don't keep voting for it. Plain and simple. And go vote your values. Imagine this, if you went into the ballot blind in terms of not knowing a party affiliation for any of the candidates, who would you vote for? What values do they have? Do those candidates have? Do those people have? And are they actually aligned with your values? And so I ask you, whoever you are, whatever is important to you, go vote your values on election day. If that means voting against me, if that means voting for my opponents, go do that. That's what democracy is. I don't want to inflict my will on you. So we need our elections because good elections are how we as a civil and civilized society agree to disagree. And
Yes.
Dion, this is such a treat for all of us here because this is a very civil conversation. We should agree to disagree on issues, or agree where we agree and work on those together. So bottom line, go vote your values. Don't waste your vote for voting for something you really don't want. When I go to a restaurant, I order, if I want a cheeseburger, I order the cheeseburger because I want the cheeseburger, not because I want to take the cheeseburger away from the table next to me, right? That's crazy.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Final question, because I know we're out of time, which again is really unfortunate. But we both have campaigns. It's a lot of work. I'm sure you're tired. What is the single biggest thing that you see if you were to get elected? I guess it's a two-part question, because one, do you think you'll actually be able to get things done, since you'll likely be the only libertarian, the rest will be supermajority Republican? And what's the biggest hurdle you see in that regard?
Good question. So I think the question is sort of, as a libertarian, how on earth are you going to work with Republicans and Democrats? And that answer is actually quite well. So think about every time you had a dispute and wanted a moderator or a neutral third party or somebody in between to be independent. And that's where we as libertarians can be very, very useful for everyone, for all of us. And I think as a third party, we can hold all of us more accountable. And just like my friend in Morgan County, having that transparency, putting us all on the same page brings the best out of everybody. So having more parties or having more perspective is going to be beneficial. And I can work with everybody because I don't answer to a party chairperson. I don't answer to, and to your point, it's again unlikely that I will, certainly by 2022, there is no one else, there is not a libertarian in the governor's office. And we might have some more libertarians in the state house, but certainly not as a majority. So I'm going to have to work with both other parties. And that means we're going to have to find those areas where we agree, and we're going to have to work on those issues. And we don't need to make lifelong enemies out of our friends because we disagree on some other issue. So where we agree, let's work together. Where we disagree, let's agree to disagree and pursue those elsewise. But the short answer is, just like a third party, I can actually be more efficient and more effective to work with all parties to get things done. And I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome. Fantastic. Listen, it was a real pleasure having you on and getting to talk face to face. For what it's worth, without crossing any lines, I hope things go well for you. And I appreciate you taking the time. I'm going to kind of drop you off camera here. But before I do, where can people learn more? I posted it at the beginning, but I'm going to drop it again for everyone. Let me find it. There we go.
Thank you. So, Dion, the pleasure is entirely mine. And I do want to say how much I appreciate this. And so everyone listening, again, vote your values. Think about people and the kind of professionalism, whether Dion has his views, his party politics. I have my views, my party politics. But think about the people who are going to represent the civility, the professionalism, and the compassion for, we're all neighbors, right? We all live here in Indiana. So let us treat each other that way. And I'm so glad and grateful for you hosting this and showing that we can do things differently. We're better than that. And I do want to ask, Dion, before I talk about me, how about you? You're running a race as well. What have you been focused on, and what are you focusing on for the next 13 days here?
Sure. So I'm running for state representative for District 9, which is Chesterton to east of Michigan City, Rolling Prairie area, up the north end up here. And the current incumbent has voted with their party consistently every vote. They have not achieved anything. They haven't had anything passed. One bill made it to committee where it died in 4 years. And the reason for this isn't because they're a bad person, because they're a very, very nice lady. The problem is party politics. They refuse to cross the aisle to work on anything that will actually give the Republicans a win, unfortunately. And I'm so tired of that. Whether I win or lose, I want someone that listens to the voters and is willing to get out there and work with the other side. The state of Indiana is a supermajority Republican. That's just the way it is. And until and unless we get someone who's willing to cross the aisle and work on issues regardless of where it originated, we're going to continue to stagnate. So I'm getting out there. I'm knocking doors. I'm doing my Facebook, my online stuff. I'm doing everything that I can. I ran in 2020 and I did better than a Republican ever has for a traditionally, Democrat district, because I think people, especially this year, I'm hearing from a lot of people they're tired of that. They're tired of people just adhering to the single party view and not believing that there's something that we can learn. As a matter of fact, just last night, I had the former mayor of Michigan City on, who is a Democrat. He's, ran a Democrat city. And one of the stories that he told me was how he had the governor here, Pence, and he treated him like the governor, not a Republican governor, but he's the governor of the state. Rolled out the red carpet, was very nice. He got the governor's personal cell. And when he needed something, he was able to call him and say, hey, we've been on this list, Michigan City. There was this historic project that was supposed to happen. And we were like way down on the list. He made the call and all of a sudden we weren't, we were towards the top and it got done. And that's how it should be. We should be able to work with each other to get things done that benefit our district or our state or whatever. So.
And that's exactly right. We have to overcome partisan politics to do the job, yes, which is to serve neighbors. And in fact, from my perspective, one of the things that usually comes up in debates is, Jeff, will you certify the elections? And what I've pledged before, and this is very much in line with what you've just said, I pledge to neither blindly certify the elections nor blindly reject the elections. I'm going to do, crazy as this sounds, I'm going to do the job of Secretary of State. I'm going to assess what I see, what I understand, what my expert clerks tell me, and I'm going to make the decision based on that and decide whether, if the elections are correct and should be certified, or whether we need to go back and do some work before we confirm them. So I think it's that modesty, that humility to say what is right and to serve the person who votes for us, to serve our neighbor. And Dion, it's just such a pleasure to hear that from you and to be able to hear that consistently across different partisan lines. And I hope everyone listening sees that there is hope.
I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Like I said, I'm going to drop you off here. Before I do, I want to tell you, we got a comment from Kevin. He said, the whole thing won't pop up. Oh, yeah, it did actually. It says, I agree with the receipt concept. I prefer the scanned paper ballot, the concerns with Dominion nationally. Then the CEO of the ballot machine company gets arrested, shows there are major concerns in our elections and electronics. This has misplaced the public's trust. Your method sounds like a step in the right direction to preventing and making it harder to commit the F word. Thank you for answering my question. So, and Kevin actually said he made the change 2 elections ago. I believe he means to the Libertarian Party, best choice ever made and never look back. Party politics, namely duopoly, have divided the U.S. So there is support there, absolutely, and you have some great ideas.
Excellent. Well, Dion, thank you so much. And Kevin, we could talk more offline. But yes, we both would agree that a scanned paper ballot is preferred over even a printed receipt. And that is more secure. And you're referring to, and this is one of the things that should concern all of us. I mentioned it at least once during the debate. There is a company called Konnech, Konnech. They have a software called Poll Chief. It is used in Indiana, in at least Marion County, and I think Lake as well, maybe some others. And we use it here primarily for poll worker staff, but the software also does work for voter registration databases. So we don't yet know how much data they have, but the CEO of this company was arrested in Los Angeles, California, and the district attorney's office there published a press release. The indictment, the criminal charges against this CEO, Eugene Yu, last name YU, we don't yet know what those are, but it is related, it seems, to a breach of the contract, and that our American data, the data of our American poll workers at least, now appears or is confirmed to have appeared on servers, computers in the People's Republic of China. So there are legitimate concerns about election security that is enough to warrant an indictment and an arrest. So there's a lot more that we need to learn. And of course, this is America, so we have due process, innocent before being proven guilty, but there is enough evidence to at least issue the warrant. And that should make us all concerned.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was a real pleasure. Thank you for coming on. I hope that regardless of what happens, I think we can definitely have some more conversations in the future.
Absolutely. So whoever you vote for, get out and vote. November 8th is the day. Thank you again.
Thanks. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Jeff Maurer. He's running for Secretary of State for the state of Indiana. And so, listen, I have heard from some people that for their own personal reasons, they don't want to vote either Democrat or Republican. I watched the debate. I thought it was a really good debate. I wish Diego would have been there. I would have liked to have heard his answers on some things. Listen, I've had some. I talked to a lot of people, right, from all across the political spectrum, and I have my own personal reasons for not caring for Diego. It has nothing to do with him as a candidate, just as a person. And I covered this way back when. I'm not going to rehash it now. But he won the primary for the Republican Party, so I'm like, okay, cool, fine, put that all aside, let's go. I really enjoyed the answers that Mr. Maurer gave. I really was terrified by the answers that Destiny Wells gave during the debate. It really comes down to more government for her. That almost every answer was, well, if we just give government more control, everything will be fine. When it came to election integrity, when it came to and there was a reason that I chose the assisted living question for Mr. Moore, because he is a businessman himself, and he understands that many times government isn't the answer. We have a process in place, and yeah, we could require more things. We could require more inspections. We could require this, and this. But every layer of government we add adds more bureaucracy. It adds more taxpayer funds that are needed to manage this ever-growing, burgeoning machine that we have created. And one of the things that I found when running for office, I ran for Congress in 2020, and I was actually doing the research on it, and it is absolutely mind-blowing how many employees the federal government has, how many different agencies. And, we're seeing this now with obviously the three-letter agencies are running amok, and, that's a whole other story. But each of these agencies has millions and millions of dollars, hundreds of millions, sometimes billions of dollars that are spent. And we have that on a state level as well, obviously a smaller version. Why would we want to continue to add bureaucracy when the real government, the government that was originally envisioned by the people for the people, right, was the only thing government was there to do was what the citizens could not. That's the entire purpose of the government, is so that it can perform the functions that we as tiny individuals cannot perform on our own. So I just want to say this to everyone watching, and I agree wholeheartedly with him. Vote your conscience. Vote for the person that you believe in. I had a couple people reach out to me and say, I can't take the chance on Destiny Wells winning this election. She scares me, and I'm just going to say this. When I watch the debate, I'm watching her, right? And if you get a chance, go back and look. Most of the time and I'm just going to say it, most of the time she keeps the crazy under control. It's just this, this kind of, but when the questions are asked that she's really passionate about, the veil slips, and you see this, I can't even describe it. You have to watch it. But again, the answer is always more government. So they asked me, I cannot take the chance on on someone like that becoming Secretary of State. I know what it was. Anytime the subject of election integrity comes up, you'll see that, you know, the big lie. It slips, and it's very aggressive, right? I can't take the chance, so I'm gonna have to suck it up, and I'm gonna have to vote for whatever, right? I think the best advice that I've ever given, and I said this every time I talk about voting, I would never ever tell you who to vote for, because that's not my place. You have to decide for yourself who to vote for. But so many times in the past, and in 2020 especially, right? We had two sides. Now you know, obviously, you know, I got Orange Man bad behind me, so it's pretty obvious how I voted. But if you look at that, and then you look at the other side, right, the Democrat candidate Joe Biden, people are like, I will vote for anything as long as it's not Donald Trump, and they did. And look where we are. Look what the result of that is. I will vote for anything if it's not that. I will vote for this just so that doesn't get there. I know some of you out there may detest Donald Trump. Some of you out there may detest Joe Biden. It doesn't have to be one or the other. There are alternatives. And this is why voting in the primary is so critically important, but that's another discussion. We're past the primary. Primary voting is irrelevant. But what you can do is you can make your voice heard when you go in that voting booth. You can vote for the person that, for in whatever way, maybe you like more government control. Maybe you like the idea that the federal government should take over our elections, because I'm telling you, that's what Destiny Wells wants. She said it during the debate. Federal government should run it. That alone terrifies me. If you think there are problems now, but you should vote for the person that most represents your values. If that is Diego Morales, fine. Go vote for Diego Morales. If that is Jeff Maurer, vote for Jeff Maurer. If that, for whatever reason, is Destiny Wells, then may God have mercy on your soul, but go vote for Destiny Wells. I'm just kidding. You guys vote for whoever, you know, whoever represents your choice is the best. I cannot in good conscience vote for someone that I do not believe in. And you know what? It is perfectly okay to skip a race. That's allowed. You do not have to complete a ballot. If you just, I cannot bring myself to vote on this one, I'm going to tell you, there's a couple that I had to skip because I did not have faith in any of the people. I'm going to tell you what I wish more people would skip, and that is school board. If you do not know the people on the ballot, if you don't know about these people, do not give them a vote. Don't. It's much better to let people who know. Yeah. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you coming out. I appreciate you spending the time to watch what I believe was a very informative, very educated, and very civil discussion between two people who just happen to belong to two different political parties. I think this is how our constitutional republic was designed to work. I think it is a civil, intelligent conversation between two people who may not have the same letter behind their names, but whose ultimate goal is the betterment of our city, our county, our state, our government. Because I truly believe, whether you agree or disagree with certain aspects, I do believe Mr. Maurer wants to improve things with our election process. I believe he wants to improve things across the board in Indiana, and I do wish him the very best of luck. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time, and I do have some other stuff coming up. The next video that I think I'm going to do is Monday night, where I'm actually going to cover who I recommend on your ballot. And again, I wouldn't ever tell anybody who to vote for, but I'm going to include information that I've been able to glean about various candidates. I'm going to start at the federal level. We've got a couple of Senate races, or a Senate race. We have a United States Congress race. These are critically important. But I'm starting first because I want more time to gather information on local candidates, because change starts locally. I believe that the Secretary of State's race is slightly more important than who happens to sit in the Senate. Is the Senate important? Absolutely. But the Secretary of State wields amazing power and can be a force for amazing good or not so much. So think carefully, vote for what you believe in. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, God bless you, God bless Indiana, and God bless the United States.
If you'd like to support the show, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/Dion's Daily Dose. This has been Dion's Daily Dose, hosted by Dion Bergeron. Executive producers Sean Holgram and Michael Beebe. Copyright 2022. Dion's Daily Dose. All rights reserved.